In a country plagued by corruption, where the powerful grew wealthier while the poor grew weaker, lived a young man named Idris. His homeland was once beautiful and prosperous, but over the years, greed and injustice had taken hold, choking the dreams of its people. Bribery was common, the government was corrupt, and those who tried to speak out often disappeared without a trace. Idris was just an ordinary man, a teacher at a local school, but he had a fire burning within him. Each day, he watched his students suffer. Their families couldn't afford books or even proper meals because corrupt officials took everything they could. He heard the whispers of the elderly who had lived through better times and the cries of his neighbors, who lost everything due to unjust laws and endless taxes. Deep inside, Idris knew he couldn't remain silent. One day, after seeing a beloved colleague lose their home due to false accusations and corruption, Idris decided that enough was enough. He could no longer stand by and watch. He knew that speaking out would be dangerous, but he couldn't ignore the cries for justice any longer. Idris began small. He started by writing anonymous blog posts, exposing the corrupt dealings of local officials. His words were sharp and truthful, and soon, people started paying attention. Others began sharing their own stories of injustice, and before long, his blog had a following. People found hope in his words, and he became the voice they had longed for, someone who dared to speak the truth. But with this new attention came danger. The corrupt leaders noticed Idris's growing influence and wanted to silence him. Threats began to pour in, warnings to stop his campaign, or else. But Idris refused to back down. Instead, he grew bolder, organizing peaceful protests and using social media to spread his message. Soon, his movement gained momentum. What started as a small group of frustrated citizens grew into a national force. People across the country began to unite under a single banner, Justice for All. They held rallies, shared their stories, and demanded change. The government could no longer ignore the rising tide of unrest. In retaliation, Idris was arrested on trumped-up charges. His followers feared for his life. The corrupt regime hoped to crush the movement by silencing its leader, but they underestimated the power of Idris's message. While in prison, Idris's words continued to spread. His writings, smuggled out through friends and allies, became even more powerful. The more the government tried to silence him, the louder the people's calls for justice became. International attention soon followed, and the world began to see the corruption in Idris's country. Governments, organizations, and activists around the globe started to pressure the regime, demanding Idris's release and calling for reforms. Finally, after months of imprisonment, Idris was freed. But he didn't emerge weak or broken. Instead, he was stronger, more determined, and his cause had become a nationwide movement. His name had become synonymous with courage and justice. In the years that followed, Idris's efforts, along with the tireless work of millions of citizens, led to real change. Corrupt officials were removed, new laws were put in place to protect the people, and transparency became the new standard. The people had their country back, and Idris became a symbol of hope, not just for his own nation, but for oppressed people everywhere. Idris didn't seek fame or fortune, he simply wanted justice. And though the road had been dangerous and difficult, he never gave up. His voice, once small and alone, had sparked a revolution, proving that one person, with enough courage and conviction, truly could change the world. Moral * true change often begins with one person brave enough to stand up to injustice. When that voice becomes a movement, it has the power to reshape a nation.